Welcome back to our series on SQL interview question and answers. So in this part of the video, we have an interesting SQL interview question. We have to write an SQL query to get the hierarchy in any particular organization starting from any given employee. Alright, so we have a given employee ID. From there, we need to start who is the manager of that employee, who is the manager of that employee, and in that way, we have to form a hierarchy. So if you see on the left hand side, we have a table called EMP, which contains 3 columns. The first column contains the employee ID, the second column contains the employee name, and the third column contains the manager ID. Now, manager ID is simply the employee ID of the manager of that particular employee. For example, consider the case with Satyam. Satyam has an employee ID of 21, but whoever is the manager of Satyam has employee ID of 40. And I can see in the same table that Akshita has the employee ID of 40. That means Akshita is the manager of Satyam. Okay. Now, if you see the output table, that what we need to output at the end is we have an employee name column on the left hand side and manager name column on the right hand side. So we start with a given employee ID. For example, in our case, it would be Rakesh. So we have to start from Rakesh. We need to find out who is the manager of Rakesh. That's Shiva. Then who is the manager of Shiva? That's Satyam. Then so on until we get the final top one on the hierarchy, which is Akshita. So for that, we need to jump over to our MySQL editor. So first thing first, we will be creating our database. So you can create your own database using create database and then the name of your database command. Since I've already created my database, I don't need to run it again. Once the database is created, we can activate our database using the use then the database name command. Then once the database is activated, now we are ready to create our own tables inside the database. So in order to create the EMP table, we can just type in create table EMP. Then we will provide the 3 column names as provided in the question and their data types are defined accordingly. Also for employee ID, I have provided a unique constraint because I don't want 2 employees containing the same employee ID. Alright. So once the table is created, we can insert the values inside this table. These values are already provided in the question, so we don't need to worry about that. Also, this code is directly provided in the video description below, so you can just copy the code from there and paste it in your editor so you can also practice along with me. Alright, so once we have the table with us, let us see the content of the table. So for that, I'll just say select star from table name. So if you see now, we have our content. So we have 5 employees inside the table. And now we can start writing SQL query on these table. Alright, so let us look at our output table again. So we have to find all the managers of all the employees, but in a sequential order. When I say sequential order, it simply means we have Rakesh as an employee, his manager is Shiva, then the next row starts from Shiva and not any other name. So it maintains that sequence when we are actually defining the hierarchy in our company. Alright. So we will be breaking our problem into 2 stages. In the first stage, we will try to find all the managers of all the employees and that's it. And in the second stage, we will do that again, but in a sequential way. And that will add some complexity to the task. But the first task where we need to just find the manager of all the employees could be another interview question as well. So your interviewer can ask you to just find the manager of all the employees using the self join command. Alright. So let us see how we can do that. So self join, as the name suggests, is whenever we try to join our table with itself, that is called self join. Alright. So for that, let us see how we can do that. So I'll just do select star from EMP and then I'll join it with the table itself. Alright. Now if you see, we have the same table, so I need to provide the temporary names to it. So we can differentiate between the 2 tables. So I'll provide first table as E1, second table as E2. Then on what condition should I join them? I'm joining them that E1 dot manager ID is equal to E2 dot employee ID. Now why I am doing this? To understand this, let us see if we want to find the managers, how we will do that manually. Alright. So let us say I'm starting with Rakesh. Rakesh's employee ID is 10, manager ID is 15. Now I know this 15 is the employee ID of the manager of Rakesh. So I'll search for this number in the same table and I'll go in the first row, second row. Okay, in third row, this value is matched with the manager ID that I'm looking for. So I'm matching manager ID with the employee ID in the same table itself. Okay, and then I'm just finding the name against that employee ID, and Shiva will be the manager of Rakesh. But since in SQL we can't find that value in the same table itself, we are just creating two instances of the same table, and then we are matching those values using the join command on this condition. All right, so that's simple. So if I just run it, you can see the output. So we have for Rakesh, manager ID was 15. It matched it with the third row, which was containing employee ID as 15. And then we got the manager of Rakesh. So we can now remove the unnecessary columns. So I can only keep the name column from the first table, which would be my employee column, employee name. Then from the second table, I will be needing again the name column, and that would be my manager name. Okay, now if I run it, now you can see we have an employee column on the left side with all the employee names, and the manager column on the right side with all the manager names of those employees. Now we can also add one more thing to this. So if you observe in our original table, we have 5 employees, which were these employees. But since Akshita doesn't has any manager ID because she don't have any boss above her, so this particular row is not matched while joining the table with the another table. Okay, that's why Akshita is not shown as a employee. But if you want to, let's say, show Akshita as well, what I can do is I can do left join instead of inner join. So inner join will only show the values that are matched, but left join will also show the values which are not matched in the left table. All right. So the left table is the first table that we have used, which is this one. And now you can see we have Akshita as well in our employee column. All right. Now this completes our first task. Now let's move on to the second stage of this question, where we need to find the managers of all the employees, but in a sequential order only. All right. So for that, what we can do is, you can see our employee table right now. That is not in a sequence that we want. Since we want Rakesh, then we want Shiva. But in the original table, we have Satyam after Rakesh. And that's why you can also see in the output of the first stage that Satyam is shown after Rakesh as an employee. All right. So what we can do is we can pick this original table, switch the rows inside this table so that they become in a sequential order, and then we can apply our first part, which was just to find the manager of all the employees, and that will solve our task. All right. So for that, we need to use Recursive CTE. Now it is going to be a bit involved, so I would like you to please be attentive in this part and do not skip this part in between. All right. So I hope that you are already aware about CTE, which is the common table expression in SQL. If you are not aware about that, I would highly recommend you to please watch my other video here, where I have already covered another interview question specifically using this CTE command. Okay, if you are aware about it, let us move forward with it. So whenever we use CTE, the standard format is with CTE as, then we have some query inside the brackets, and then the main query, which could be anything. Okay. Now what happens is, whatever query that we have written inside this brackets, the output of that subquery will be stored in this CTE table. Then we can use this CTE table for our further processing. All right. So you are not restricted to using just this name. You can type in any other name. Just be sure to change the name down here below as well. So since we are using employee table, just to be in context, I am using the name employee CTE. All right. Now we are going to add another layer to this CTE, which is being the recursive CTE. So you have to add this keyword in MySQL. In other editors, you don't need to add this, but in MySQL, you need to add this keyword so that it recognizes that it is a recursive CTE that we are using. Okay, when I say recursive, in recursive, we always have a starting point, which we also call the anchor. And then from that starting point, we add different blocks to that point, and that too in a sequential way. So in our context, the starting point would be the starting row, for which the employee ID is already provided in the question. That would be our starting row. Then the next row will be decided based on whoever is the manager of that employee. Based on that condition, the next row will be decided. Then in that row, that would become the anchor or the starting point for the third row, and so on. It will move forward and it will give us a final table in a sequential order that we wanted. All right. First thing, we need the anchor. So the anchor is the given employee ID. So what I am trying to do is I'll be just selecting all the columns so from the employee table, and then I'll say where employee ID is equal to whatever is the given employee ID. So for now, I am assuming, let's say it's 10, which was of Rakesh, and I can show you the output of this subquery. So this is our starting point. So this would be my starting row. And if you see in the output, this is my starting name as well, Rakesh. And the second name is Shiva, which is the manager of, who is the manager of Rakesh. All right, so this becomes our starting point. Then comes the next part to our recursive CTE, which is the recursive part. All right. So first was the anchor part, the second is the recursive part. So in recursive part, now as soon as this code is completed, the output of this subquery, which is shown down here, is stored in my EMP CTE table temporarily. All right. So I can use this table now for finding my next row. So I can say select star from EMP CTE. Then I need to join it with my original EMP table, and you'll get it in a while why we are doing that. So I'll join it with the EMP table on the condition that EMP CTE dot manager ID is equal to EMP dot EMP ID. So what I'm trying to do is the manager ID which we got in our first row, which was 15, is matched with the employee ID in our original table. So it will search for that row which matched with this. So that will give me an output of one row. All right. Now I don't want all the 6 values to be shown because I only want 3 values which will be attached to this row. So I will be getting the EMP ID, name, and manager ID of which table? So the EMP CTE table is used to match what is the employee, next employee that we should select. And once that employee is matched, we will be getting the ID of that employee from my EMP table, the name of that employee, and the manager of that employee. And that should give me an output which I have already shown in the screen right now. Okay. So once we get this output as a row, it will be attached to the previous starting point, and for that we need to use a union all keyword. Okay, so always remember we have to join the anchor and the recursive part using the union all keyword. And once that is completed, I will for now show you the final table that is stored in the EMP CTE. Okay, if I run this, now you can see the sequence first. So we have Rakesh, we have Shiva, we have Satyam, we have Akshita. And that is the sequence that we needed in the output. Rakesh, Shiva, Satyam, and Akshita. Okay, so that solves half of our part. All right. So as you can observe, in the anchor part, we started with Rakesh. We selected the second row. We selected the third row using the anchor as Shiva, and so on. All right. Now that's simple. Now once we have the table in the sequential order, we will just use this part that we have find out how to calculate the managers of all the employees and just paste it here. All right. But the thing is, I have to use this CTE table now instead of employee because this is our updated table with the sequence. And if I run, it should give me the output. Okay. Now you see we have Rakesh's manager Shiva, Shiva's manager Satyam, Satyam manager Akshita, and Akshita doesn't have any manager. So that solves our interview question task. Now, if you want to add some more thing to it, so you can see that Akshita, in front of Akshita, it is written that Akshita doesn't have any boss, but we are given a null value. So for that, what you can do is you can add a condition if null keyword on the name of the manager, then what should be the output? No boss. And if I run this, Now you can see we have our complete task ready. So that's it. If you find anything that you didn't understand in this video, you're most welcome to write your queries in the comment sections below. And please subscribe this channel so that you don't miss out on more such videos. Thank you for watching.